Welcome to the Krista Redpath Show, where sports takes center stage and stories come to life. I'm Krista, your host, veteran analyst, and passionate storyteller, bringing you weekly in-depth conversations and sharp analysis across the world of sports. The Krista Redpath Show, breaking down the game, elevating the story, championing the female voice. Today's show is proudly brought to you by Ryan Miller & Coburn Trial Attorneys. You're a full-service law firm based right here in Missoula, Montana. Whether you've been injured in an auto accident or you're being charged with a crime, their team will provide you with state-of-the-art representation. Ryan Miller & Coburn, your Montana attorneys. Visit rmcattorneys.com or call 406-542-2233. Today, we're joined by Jimmy Farris, Lewiston, Idaho native, former Griz football standout, Super Bowl champion, and current keynote speaker and author. Jimmy Farris was a 4-year starter for the Grizzlies from 1997 to 2000. After redshirting in 1996, he steadily rose through the ranks, becoming a primary target in the Griz offense. His senior season, legendary, 129 career receptions, 2,223 yards, 21 touchdowns, and the unforgettable overtime game-winning catch against Appalachian State that sent Montana to the national championship. Farris finished as an All-Big Sky and All-American receiver, leaving a lasting mark on Montana football history. He went on to play in the NFL from 2001 to 2008, spending time with the Patriots, Colts, Redskins, 49ers, and Falcons, primarily contributing as a wide receiver and special teams player. After retiring, he transitioned into public speaking, coaching, media, and authorship, while also engaging in community and leadership work. As of September of 2025, Jimmy Farris is an active keynote speaker, executive coach, and author focusing on leadership, development, and high-performance strategies. It is a pleasure to welcome Jimmy Farris to the Krista Redpath Show. I am so excited to be joined by Jimmy Farris this week on the Krista Redpath Show. Welcome in, Jimmy.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to catch up with you and make an appearance on your podcast.
You have been back in Idaho, lived in Atlanta for about 18 years, but why don't you talk about what you're doing in Idaho these days?
I moved back a little over 3 years ago. Mostly, I just wanted to be close to the family. Atlanta was great. I had a great life out there, but as you grow and evolve, you just outgrow certain places or situations. And so Atlanta just wasn't home anymore. I wanted to get back close to where my family and people I love and care about are. And so I came back 3 years ago, and luckily my job that I've been doing this for 8 or 9 years now, I can obviously do remotely. Executive coaching, leadership development, mostly over Zoom. I take advantage of all the technologies of 2025. So I'm able to do that from anywhere. Travel a little bit, once or twice a month, I'll go do something live or in person, and just feel really fulfilled in my career, where I'm at in life. Coming back to Idaho has made me feel really grounded, really centered, again, close to, where I grew up and family and friends and people I've known my whole life. And my work is really fulfilling. And so the days since our old Griz days and Aber Hall and the field house till now have been really fulfilling. And I'm just really thankful I'm in a really good place.
Well, I love to hear that you're back in Idaho. Let's take it back to that, Jimmy. I really want to hear all about your upbringing and growing up in Lewiston, Idaho, small town, northern Idaho, beautiful, absolutely beautiful part of the state, just gorgeous landscape. Can you talk about what it was like growing up in Lewiston?
I'm so thankful that I grew up in a place like Lewiston. I mean, it's all the cliches, right? You didn't have to lock your doors. You could leave your keys in your car. We didn't fear crime or anything bad happening. We would take off on our bikes in the morning and be gone all day, riding all over town. And so I think that, growing up in a very safe, secure environment just gave me a sense of peace and safety and comfort. My upbringing there was probably, again, cliche. We were kids that did all the fun stuff, went out and played sports, football, basketball, anywhere there was a hoop, we were shooting. If there was an open field, we were playing football and, of some kind, going to the swimming pools in the summers, just all that fun stuff, like really had the opportunity to be a kid and really live kind of the childhood dream. And so really thankful that I got to grow up in a place like Lewiston.
So you're the youngest of 5. So talk about that dynamic. Were you getting pounded in the driveway playing sports, or talk about the age gap and with five siblings?
Yeah, so my oldest brother is 10 years older than me. And so he was, kind of a hero idol when I was a kid. Whatever he was doing, I was trying to tag along, and he was playing high school football and basketball and all that. So I was always front and center with him. And I don't think I've got any stories about, getting beat up and picked on. My brothers and sisters were incredible, really supportive. Those are fond memories. Those are good days of all five of us kids growing up in my parents' house. On my childhood, I think in a lot of ways really shaped everything that I've done since. For one big reason, I talked about this in my book. I never felt from my parents that there was any pressure to succeed or do something. My parents never said things to us like, you have to go to college and get a degree and be successful or do X, Y, and Z in order to be loved or supported by us. So my parents let us know that we were loved and supported and cared for no matter what we did. And I think I realized that at a young age. I don't know that I understood at the time that that's what I was feeling, but I just felt really supported and loved by my parents no matter what. And that gave me the freedom to take big chances, to go for something that, I could crash and burn at. And so there was no question when I was in high school that I was going to college on a football scholarship. Didn't know where, didn't know how that was going to happen, but that was what I was doing. And when I was in college, there was no question I was going to the NFL, and I had no backup plan, and I wasn't worried about, what the future held. I knew what I wanted to do, and I felt the comfort and the safety to do that because I didn't feel any pressure that I had to be somebody or achieve anything in order to be loved, accepted by my parents and my family. And thinking back on my childhood, that's probably the most important piece for me, is that freedom allowed me to go do and try to become anything I wanted. And it's a really important part of my childhood.
That stability. And I feel the same way, that freedom almost to be bored, right?
Yes.
To fall in love with doing things outside, fall in love with neighborhood games, just having those formative years where our patterns were set at such a young age.
Yes.
So you were a three-time or a three-sport athlete, a state champion in basketball, also a track athlete. You said you always knew it was football. Did you ever have any question about that? Were there other sports that maybe I do want to play college basketball? Maybe I want to continue with track. Was it always football?
Well, when I was 10, I wrote a goal. I actually still have the piece of paper. I was in the fifth grade, and I wrote that my goal in life was to play in the NFL. So that was a goal kind of all the way through. There was one period of time during my freshman year of high school where I was small. I was like 5'8", 140 pounds. And I just started thinking maybe basketball might be the route for me. In Idaho at that time, junior high was still, it was 7, 8, 9, right? So you weren't at the high school until you got to your sophomore year. And so one of the varsity basketball coaches at the high school was one of my teachers at the junior high. And I had a conversation with him one day after school, and I said, I don't think I'm going to play football next year. I want to really focus on basketball. And he shut me down real quick. He was like, don't do that. He was like, you can still focus on basketball, but we want to see you guys playing multiple sports, competing. He said, you probably won't spend the time you think you will practicing basketball with all the extra time from not playing football. So he's like, just play football and see what happens, and we'll deal with basketball when that starts. And I'm still close with him. His name's Dave Cornelia, and I see him all the time. And I remind him of that often because that was an inflection point kind of in my life where had he counseled me otherwise, maybe I would not have played football and tried to play basketball. And I was a terrible basketball player. I was very
Well, I don't think you were terrible. If you won a state championship,
well. I was very average. Let's put it that way. But those type of things just make me so thankful for the people that I had in my life at the time, that just, a little conversation here or a little nugget there that really shaped and molded me at that time. And so I ended up playing football. I ended up making varsity my sophomore year, had a wonderful career at Lewis and High School, mostly due to the fact that my high school football head coach again, still a close friend to this day, was just everything I needed at that point in my life. And I got everything that I wanted out of my high school sports career: football, basketball, ran track. Again, just really formative years for me as a young athlete and as a young man trying to grow and figure out myself and life and all of the things. I had these really amazing people in my life at that time that really shaped and molded me. And I think, again, when I look back on my high school athletics, yeah, there's so much fun with, winning games and state championships and all this cool stuff, but it's that stuff that I look back on and say, man, that's the real gold in that period of my life, was those coaches and teachers that I had that really shaped and molded me.
Do you keep in touch with your high school football coach now?
I do, yeah. Every time I go to Lewiston, I see him. We talk frequently. That's the cool thing, again, about a small town like Lewiston, is all those people are still around. And if I go to a high school game, I run into all my old coaches. And so really fun times catching up with them.
So as you were going through the recruiting process, which you're right in Boise State's backyard, I'm assuming you've got to be looking at the University of Idaho, Boise State. But the Griz, they're having so much success during those years when you were getting looked at. Talk about your recruiting process and what ultimately swayed you to become a Griz.
So, yes, I was very interested in University of Idaho and Boise State. My brother had gone to University of Idaho, so I had a lot of connections up there. One of my sisters went up there. It's a 30-minute drive from Lewiston. And so I kind of grew up watching the Vandals. My high school football coach had a kid that played quarterback for him named Brad Lebo. A lot of Griz fans will remember that name, Brad Lebo.
I remember that name.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So Lebo played quarterback at Lewiston and then went over to Montana. And so my head coach had a connection with Mick Dennehy and Brent Pease and Don Reed and all those guys that were at Montana at the time. And so he started talking to me about Montana. And, I didn't really have any knowledge of the Griz. At that time, there was no, broadcast rights or anything. Like, we never saw Griz sports, just over the border in Idaho, which you would think you would. The only time I was ever aware of the Griz was when they played the Vandals at home. And so we started making some calls over there, and I ended up taking a trip during my senior year. And when I got there, saw that first game, I was like, oh, I'm coming here. Like, this is where I want to be. I saw that crowd and the environment. Just, Missoula. And even back then, Missoula was just an incredible place to be and live. And so I made up my mind midway through my senior year that I wanted to go to Montana. The question was whether or not they wanted me, which they were moderately interested. I ended up going there on a partial scholarship. Back then, they could still do those split. I think they paid my tuition. I had to pay my room and board that first year. But yeah, once I visited over there, it was a done deal. I was like, I want to be a Griz, and this is where it's going to happen.
What was it like your first time coming into Washington Grizzly? So I'm a year different. I'm a year older than you. So I would have been at that game cheering. Talk about that first time where you come in there, because the fan environment is like nothing, it's called the Mecca of FCS football, but it really is something special when you look around at all the fans within Washington Grizzly.
So I remember walking with Brent Pease down the tunnel during early pregame, walking down the tunnel, and then it kind of keeps getting wider and wider, and then walked out onto the field and saw the stadium, which back then didn't look anything like it does now, but was still incredible. And the stadium was empty at that time. It was just kind of some players out there warming up. And I just remember looking around thinking, this is what football is supposed to look like, with Mount Sentinel right there in the background. And then when it filled up, when the stadium filled up and the game started, I just never experienced anything like that. And so, again, it was at that moment that I was like, this is where I want to be next fall. Next fall, I'm going to be on the field wearing one of those uniforms and looking up at all these fans. It was really one of those experiences for me where, even though I hadn't made it there yet, I still was kind of getting that vibe, like, this is what all the hard work is for. This is why I ran all those sprints and lifted the weights and was trying to eat, 6,000 calories a day to gain weight and strength. It's so that I can be in an environment like this. I'll never forget that. It was a game in October against Weber State. I'll never forget it. And 1995, They obviously went on to win the national championship that year, which even more sealed the deal for me. I was like, yeah, I'm going there for sure. And so when they offered me that partial scholarship, I jumped at it.
It's so interesting because I think back to my experiences of coming over to Montana too. I wanted to be a Lady Griz since I was 12 years old. I decided when I was very young, I was going to go play for Robin Selvig. But I remember coming over to a game and it was over 8,000. I mean, it was sold out against Tennessee, the number one team in the nation. And I'm looking around like, I want to play here. And that is something interesting, Jimmy, because we had so much success across multiple sports. The women's basketball team was winning, the men's basketball team was winning, the football team, everyone around us was having a lot of success at the college level.
That environment was so conducive to that because, you could throw in a number of little axioms here, right? But like I think about the idea that success leaves clues. And so all around that facility were people that were having success at really, really high levels. Obviously before I got there, Dave Dickinson was, a god. I mean, one of the best. Yeah, I mean, iconic. And so the clues that he left for everybody in the football locker room, the success continued after he left. The Lady Griz had been good for a handful of years before you got there, before I got there. I remember when I first got on campus and watching you guys play and starting to hear all about, I was just like, oh, they're dominant. And so we didn't miss one of your guys' games because we wanted to be around success. We wanted to witness success. You guys were winning Big Sky championships and playing in the NCAA tournament. Like, they always talk about that you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time around. If that's true, we were all around really high performing people at all times when we were in that facility, in the field house. And I can't help but think that success that others were having just bred success in other people because we all saw each other winning and saw each other working. And so everybody wanted to try to match or replicate what the next person was doing. And so that was a really special time around those facilities there because everybody, like you said, every sport had people that were dominating at really high levels.
Today's sponsor is the Ryan Miller and Coburn Trial Attorneys, your full service law firm based right here in Missoula, Montana. Whether you've been injured in an auto accident or you're being charged with a crime, their team will provide you with state-of-the-art representation. Ryan Miller and Coburn, your Montana trial attorneys. Visit rmcattorneys.com or call 406-542-2233. Jimmy, this has been so much fun, and I now want to really dive in to the years where you played for the Griz. You come in 1996 and you redshirt. The Griz are coming off that national championship win. I will never forget greeting the team after they got off the charter plane and, Missoula was just alive. But yet they returned 18 starters for that next year. And so it continued. Can you talk about that leadership and tone coming in your first year?
Yeah, it was very intimidating to walk into a locker room full of that many guys that had had the type of success that they'd had. There was, again, just kind of an aura of confidence, a winner's mentality, a championship mentality. So there was an unspoken expectation of what was going to be required to be successful there. And the leadership on that team with all those seniors, we could probably start listing off some of those names, guys you would know: Mike Earhart, Joe Douglas, Blaine McElmurray, Dave Kempfert, Sean Gokachia, Mike Agee. Walking into that locker room, again, was very intimidating, but it was also an opportunity, again, to watch and observe people that had had the success that I was trying to have and see what they were doing that was contributing to that. And so my first couple of days on campus, I immediately locked in on Joe Douglas. I was like, what's he doing? How's he doing it? What are his habits? What are the things that he does that I want to implement? What are the things that I maybe want to try to do better than him? I mean, all of these things. And to have a quarterback like Brian Aiyat, who in that 96 year was the 1AA first team All-American quarterback. We were 14-0 going into that national championship. I'll tell you this, my first taste of Grizzly athletics was, we just win. There was nothing, no other option was acceptable. It was like, we win, especially at home. Nobody beats us at home. We find a way to win. And so I think that mentality that those guys, those previous teams, the 95 team and then the 96 team put in place, even though we didn't have that kind of success every year for the rest of my career there, that was still the thought. When we lost or when we weren't, ranked number one in the country, it was like, no, we're still the best team though. Just because that was the environment that I came into. That was created by so many of those great players, great coaching staff, great people in the athletic department, just on down. So it was really a championship level culture and environment there. And that never left.
So you were a 4-year starter. Every year that you played, the Griz were ranked in the top 5 in the country. You finished 52-14. I mean, that's pretty impressive when you look at those types of numbers. You have said that, and I've heard you say this in previous media, that those were the 5 best years of your life. I completely agree. Unbelievable years. Can you talk about your growth and what you went through?
The reason why I say those were such great years is because of the growth, because that's all it was. You come into college as an 18-year-old and then you leave, for me, 22 or 23. Those are really, really formative years. I mean, those are years where you're really figuring out who you are as a person, who you want to be. Then you put on top of that all the lessons that come from playing sports at a really high level, which you know well. I just look back on those years and the only thing you can say is, man, growth, because it wasn't always pretty. I mean, when you say that, like, I started for 4 years, won all these games and had this great career, like on paper, yes, but there was so many trials, so much, again, all these things that you understand, injuries here and there, or being in and out of the lineup, or, worried about my stats, or worried about whether I was playing well enough or not, feeling not good enough, the insecurity that I might lose my spot, like all of these things that just weigh heavily on you when you're a college athlete. At the time, I didn't always appreciate it. But again, looking back, I can just say, what an amazing time to grow and evolve and learn and become such a better version of myself. And then you throw on top of that, the lifetime friendships that you make, the connections with fans and people around Missoula that are still dear to me to this day. Even factoring in my pro career, which was fantastic, a great time of my life, those 5 years in Missoula, I still put that at the top of the list.
Isn't it crazy though? Because when you come in, you look around and you're surrounded by incredible athletes all around you. And you're like, I'm here now. I want to be one of the best. That's one thing that I hear about you, is that you would size it up, but then you're like, okay, I'm going to be in the mix. And one thing that I don't think people understand about how competitive it was, we were always watching our back for our spots. It was a dogfight for minutes or plays or getting on the field. I mean, that's how it felt for the Lady Griz. Every single practice was almost as competitive as a game. There are struggles and there is endurance that you have to fight through, right, Jimmy? There were times where it wasn't just all winning games.
Yeah, there were times where it felt like you weren't going to win another game. I mean, and coaches have a way sometimes of highlighting the negative or what's not going right. And part of that's their job to never let you get too high on yourself or think that you're too good. But it's just so interesting you bring that point up, because there's so much. I mean, we could do an entire podcast probably on how to navigate some of that. But you're friends with these people, but you're also competing with them for spots. And
Right.
Sometimes their failures or lack of success is good for you. And it's hard, again, as an 18, 19-year-old to be able to compartmentalize that and not sometimes root for that because it gives you an opportunity. All those things, again, though, are such wonderful lessons for life that I don't think you can learn outside of a competitive sports environment at that age. I'm sure you can, but I certainly don't know of them. That's all that I know is competing, like you said, for a spot, for playing time. At the same time, trying to incorporate that mentality of put the team first and be the best team player that you can be. It's interesting to navigate that. As people struggle with that in their 50s, let alone as, a late teenager, right? So many good lessons from that time in life.
Did you have a favorite year? I know that's kind of an interesting question to ask. I do, and I won 4 championships for the Lady Griz, 4 for 4. But I definitely have different memories for each year. But there are, like, individually, did you feel like you had a year where you played your best football? Let me ask you that first, and then I want to talk about if you had a favorite year.
So my freshman year, so after my redshirt year, so this would have been 97, that was a great year for me. Not because I had like a ton of success or just lit it up, but we had some injuries early in the season that year, and I ended up in the starting lineup, which a year previously I would not have thought that that was possible. You kind of made the point of all the returning starters, and we had the depth chart laid out. It was like, look, these are going to be the guys, and everybody else is just fighting for scraps. And I ended up, in my second year as a starter. I remember after that year, even though we didn't, go to a national championship, or we didn't even win the Big Sky that year, I remember being really fulfilled, like thinking, hey, this is going in the right direction. And again, just confirmed like all the work that I was putting in, the mentality with which I was approaching things was correct for me at that time. But if I had to tell you about my favorite year, that would definitely be my senior year. We got a new head coach. Joe Glenn came in, and Joe Glenn he just brought an entirely different energy, a new culture. It was probably the most fun year that I had, just fun and playing football. Okay. We were obviously really good. We lost our opener, and then we won 12 or 13 in a row. I was playing at a really high level. I didn't feel any of the stress or pressure because it was my last year. So I was like, I'm just going to send it and see what happens. I wasn't worried about next year or anything. Yeah, I just really grew into the best version of myself that I could at that time. And I think playing stress-free, just playing all out and really enjoying it allowed me to have success at a really high level. And yeah, when I think back on my Griz career, it's those first 4 years are all kind of like, yeah, they were good. And then my senior year, I was like, that was the one. That's the epitome of Griz football to me.
Joe Glenn, what a phenomenal human and personality. My introduction to him was over at the DoubleTree. He just pops down on a piano and starts playing the school song. And I'm going, who is this guy? This is incredible. But the energy he would bring. But that's so interesting. It's very parallel to me. I went through a couple injuries. I tore my ACL twice, what would have been the game before my senior season, which was really a big blow. But I think my senior year season too, having come back from a couple injuries and showing that resiliency and getting to finish with my teammates that I came in with, that was something that you look around and you're like, okay, I've arrived. This is great. I'm not looking to next year. So I have that same memory. I do want to talk about that game-winning catch that you had against Appalachian State. Can you take us through that moment? I know Griz fans are going to listen to this and they're just going to want to relive it. Jimmy, will you take us through, just set the scene for us?
Yeah, that had been a tough game. We had some success offensively, but we could never get in a rhythm. We could never just kind of get it going and get that momentum. Defense had played lights out, had held them to 3 points for 3.5 quarters. So it looked like we were just going to win an ugly football game and move on. And then it got really close towards the end. I think App State, they scored a touchdown late in the fourth quarter. Then they got the ball back and kicked a field goal and tied it. And so then all of a sudden it got really tight. It was like, oh shit, we're going to overtime. Now it's do or die. They got the ball first in overtime and kicked a field goal. And so when we took the field, it was like, we got to at least get a field goal here to keep this thing going. And we ran the ball those first couple plays, and then we got that play call in the huddle. And I remember running out there, and the guy who was guarding me was this guy named Corey Hall, who was a first-team All-American corner. He was really hyped up to be one of the top corners in 1AA at the time. And God is my witness, I remember thinking, if I can say this, I kind of said to myself, fucking Cockhill. Talking about Billy Cockhill. He was the receiver coach. He was the offensive coordinator. The fact that he dialed up that play in that moment. And I don't know that he was necessarily thinking, hey, we're going to go to the backside, the single side here with Farris. But what I remember most about that play was, number one, thinking at the time, like, I can't believe he called this right here. This is huge. It was one of those moments where I was like, here we go. What I remember most about that play is it was just a simple fade pattern there from about the 20-yard line, I think. So not a ton of room. Wasn't like a deep ball. We had done this drill in practice all year. We just called it the fade drill, but we would work on having a defender right here and having to kind of chicken wing him and hold him off, and then letting the ball kind of drop in over here, right? Giving the quarterback a place to put the ball. I know that's kind of technical stuff.
I love it. I love it. Go technical.
We did that drill every day in practice, and I'm not joking. I mean, you can probably remember those things you guys did at Lady Griz practice. It's
repetitive, like, just over and over. Yes.
And it was kind of one of those drills where we did it. we do it every day and we just be like, come on, man, this drill again. Like, we just kind of, and God damn it, if it didn't come up in that moment where that was what made the difference. When I watch that play back and I can see what I'm doing on that play, literally leaning into him and holding him off with this arm and trying to give Drew a spot to drop it in over here. And it was just one of those moments for me where, again, all of the work, all of the reps, all of the attention to detail, Cockhill forcing us to do that drill every day. It was just the moment where everything that you'd put into it was needed at that moment. And it happened at a time when, obviously that play ended the game and sent us to the national championship. And at the time, the celebration was amazing. And we did a big dog pile with the teammates. The crowd went crazy and all that stuff. And it was incredible. When I look back on it, what's important to me is what I just talked about, how that lesson of all of that repetition, all of that work, the focus on those small details, the preparation, the reliability aspect that Cockhill trusted me in that situation, that he's going to single side, come to me on that throw. Drew Miller trusting me, making a perfect throw. Those things are what really, really resonate with me now, thinking about it from 30,000 feet. What a lesson in how important those things are, in life. It's literally why those pillars of preparation, reliability, and obsession, it's what I wrote the book around. That plays the epitome of that. We were prepared.
That's what I was just going to say. Your pro framework,
yes,
your whole 2-inch tweak, we're going to dive into more, but it highlights those small, consistent, almost improvements can lead to that. And you end up really diving into that in your book, but give us just a sneak peek of that right now.
Be a pro is a phrase that my first receiver coach in San Francisco, this guy named George Stewart, used to say all the time. He said it to me on first day there. You got to learn how to be a pro. You're not an amateur anymore. It's what he told me. He ended up being a coach of mine again in Atlanta for 2 years. He became the receivers coach in Atlanta. And so I learned so much from Coach Stewart, but that idea of be a pro was what I really took away from that. And through the course of my career and then my post-career, thinking about what are the things that really matter, that really move the needle, what are some of the consistent through lines of successful people, high performers that I've seen, it really comes down to those 3 pillars that I have distilled it down to: preparation, reliability, and obsession. Like one of my coaches in Atlanta used to say, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. That's preparation to me, right? When the moment comes, you don't have time to get ready. You have to already be prepared, just like that moment in Washington Grizzly Stadium. Like we didn't have time at that point. It was like, hey, we should be prepared for this. We should be able to execute this because of the work we've already put in. Reliability, being able to put in a quality performance and be trusted to do so. Again, you think about some of these big moments in both of our careers and our lives where people put their trust in us, or we had to have trust in ourselves. It was because of the work that we put in that others had confidence and trust in us. So that reliability piece is huge. And then the obsession, the focus on the small details, the consistent curiosity and desire to learn and grow and get better. That framework it's what my whole platform is based around. It's what I coach executives around now. It's what I implement every day in my life, to whether I'm trying to lose a couple pounds in the gym or get a little bit better from stage, whatever it is, it always comes back to, am I prepared? Have I done the work to be reliable, to be able to be trusted to show up and put in a quality performance? And am I really obsessed about this? Am I demonstrating the traits of obsession where I'm all in? I've got no plan B. I've got singular focus, high attention to the details. It's really how I structure my life. And that's what that book is essentially about, kind of gives you the surface level idea of what it means to be a pro.
When I read the 2-inch tweak, and it's so interesting because we had very similar, same scenarios going on over in Dahlberg Arena, where Robin Selvig is having us enter in our offense where our point guard's feet are parallel to the free throw line extended. And he wants the ball entered in at that spot. Yep. And we're going to do it 25 times in practice, over and over and over again, until our footwork is exactly giving the angle for the pass to the post. It seems crazy, but it's a couple inches. I swear that changed the trajectory of games when you have that discipline. That's immediately what I thought of when I read this, like, read all about your 2-inch tweak, that we're all just a couple inches away from it, really success. And it's that practice and that almost ingraining it. So when you are called upon, it's just automatic.
Yeah. If you think about almost, metaphorically, but like life, sports, it's all a game of inches, right? An inch here or there, you make the play or you don't. Talk about small details. One I not dotted, one T not crossed on a business contract or a merger deal or something like that. The deal goes south. The inches matter. The details matter. And they add up and compound over time. When I hear people say things like, don't sweat the small stuff, I just want to slap them. I'm like, sweat everything, like everything.
Right.
If you're trying to operate at a really high level,
every detail matters.
it all matters. And again, this is not a shot at anybody, but if that mindset of like, don't sweat the small stuff, that's average, mediocre type thinking. And it leads to average, mediocre results. And so I always tell anybody, somebody like your son in the position, he's going to be a Griz. Like, you have to sweat every single detail because they all matter. They all add up. And you never know when some detail that you skipped or overlooked or didn't sweat will come back and bite you in the ass. And that's learning lessons the hard way. And we like to avoid that as much as we can.
So relationships, friendships that you made in Missoula. I do have to talk about this group that you had down at Stockman's Bar. You had a lunch group. Yeah. I know because there's a picture of you down there, but can you talk about some of those experiences and who was this group and how did you meet them and why did you go to lunch with them?
So that happened really organically. I guess I can say this now because there's no threat of NCAA suspension or anything, but I don't know about you, but I was broke in college. I was like extremely broke.
We were so broke. We couldn't really work.
No. Right. And our scholarships were nothing at that time.
No.
On Tuesdays, I started going down to Stocks to have lunch because Mike and Donnie would give me lunch for free, essentially.
I love it. Okay.
And so I started going down there on Tuesdays, and there was always this crew of business people, lawyers, and people like that would eat lunch at Stocks downtown. And so it kind of became this thing that word got out that I was coming down there on Tuesdays. And so it started to fill up. And it was, again, this group of guys, that was 25 years ago. I don't know if I'd remember all of those names, but I'm sure a lot of them are still in that mix. Yeah. And what it turned into was just a time for us to chat. I would talk to them about the game the previous weekend and tell stories and stuff. And then I'd preview the upcoming game for them. And it really became something for me that was something I really looked forward to. It was like, it only happened on Tuesdays because that was a day that we had some time where I could get down there for lunch. And these guys just became a really strong support system for me, a group of guys that kept me grounded, kept me really humble, helped me connect more to the Missoula community. And, again, with all those local businesses right there in downtown Missoula. And then right before the national championship that year, I went down there on Tuesday and Mike Larson had made that poster for me that you see that's still hanging down there.
It's amazing. I see it. I don't go into Stockman's very much, but if there's a Lady Griz gathering, I always look at that. Jimmy was a fan favorite, but he had this group and you weren't a drinker, so you're not down for drinking. I know that for sure. No. But it's just a really cool, another connection that athletes have to the Missoula community. Because I know now, even when I'm in line at Dairy Queen, people treat me here like I just stepped off the court yesterday. And it's like, there is no, Krista, you suiting up? I'm like, no, that would not be a good thing. But they love Griz athletes here. I mean, they live it. And it's so integrated, the university with the community of Missoula. And so that to me really points to, having a special relationship with boosters in the Missoula community.
Those people in the Missoula community really take care of Griz athletes. And, again, it was a different time when you and I were there. And so any free meal you could come up on, any little, help here or there was so appreciated. And the community always showed up and rallied for that kind of stuff. And so, again, kind of back to our previous conversation, those are some of the things that make those 5 years so special. Something I'll never forget for sure.
there's a booster that lived close to me. And again, we can talk about this now, right? Because we're done playing.
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna come after us. But his dog was named Shannon Kate. So as soon as I heard that, I was like, okay, he's a Lady Griz fan.
Yeah.
But after my games, or our games, if I had a big game, he would drop off the amount of points I had in tacos or pizzas on my front porch. And so it just became like kind of like, hey, Krista has a good game. We're coming over to her house because there's pizza and tacos, just things like that, where people just
Absolutely.
like when you look at what's going on now, Jimmy, in the scene, what we were doing was harmless.
Very harmless. No question about it, but necessary. Like, look,
We're trying to eat.
I was so broke in college, Krista, like literally not having that meal plan at the cafeteria. Sometimes it was 50-50 whether I was going to eat dinner or not, at my senior year in college. And so I'm so appreciative of those people that stepped up and helped out.
Jimmy Farris joining us today on the Krista Redpath Show. Fighting a personal injury case can be challenging. At Ryan Miller and Coburn, your personal injury attorneys right here in Missoula, Montana will work with you to pursue compensation for your pain and suffering. Connecting clients to justice. Your fight is their fight. Visit rmcattorneys.com or call 406-542-2233. Well, Jimmy, we have spent a lot of time talking about our Griz years, but now I want to get into your NFL career. It spanned over 7 years with stops at New England, the Indianapolis Colts, Washington Redskins, beloved San Francisco 49ers, Atlanta Falcons. You retired in 2008. You were part of the New England's Patriots team, the very beginning of the Tom Brady, Bill Belichick era. Can you give us a high and a low of your NFL career? And that may be hard to do.
I think at the time, the lows were, I got cut 7 times over the course of those 7 years. And, again, at the time, that was always a low point, right? You put in all this work, you've got these dreams, you want to be part of this team and this organization. And then on cut down day, your number gets called and you got to move on. And so, at the time, those were the low points. Everything else was a high point. Being able to be a part of such an exclusive fraternity with such high level people, I'm so grateful for that, and it's not because I felt like I didn't deserve it or I didn't earn it, but so many things had to go my way. For any athlete, any college or pro athlete, so many things have to go your way to get to those really, really high levels. No injuries, right place, right time, right organization, all these different things. And when I look back on it, I feel so fortunate because so many things went in my favor. Things worked out in my favor way more often than not. I got the opportunity to play for Bill Belichick, future Hall of Famer, Joe Gibbs, NFL Hall of Fame head coach, Dan Reeves, NFL Hall of Fame head coach. The things that I learned from those men about leadership and team building and how to run an organization at a high level, how to conduct yourself in the midst of high successes and low lows. The teammates that I was able to play with, Tom Brady, obviously, Mike Vick, Terrell Owens, Santana Moss in Washington, just some quality human beings that exemplified what high performance is consistently over long periods of time. I just don't think that I could have gotten a bigger gift in my life than having had the opportunity to spend 7 years in the NFL. Incredibly fulfilling at the time and then post-career. I call the NFL the gift that keeps giving. I only have a career now in speaking, coaching, training because of my NFL career, the credibility that lended me initially jumping into this space. And then all of my programs and everything that I talk about is built off of ideas from some of those people that I just listed, those head coaches that I saw leadership at the highest level from, teammates that I saw exemplified what being a pro really means. And so the word that is front and center when I think about my NFL career is gratitude. I'm just so grateful and thankful that happened for me and that I've got those experiences.
So you talk about your relationship with Terrell Owens, and you had a race with him. You had some very televised, because I do remember this.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about your relationship with him? I know you have a special friendship, but Terrell and you really tried to follow his lead, but then you ended up beating him in the race. So can you talk a little bit about that?
When I got to the 49ers, I was like 11 out of 11 on the depth chart. And so it was this idea of like, I've got to get better now. Like I don't have my rookie season to improve. It's like, I need to be better tomorrow and every day that we go out to practice. And I was sitting in the locker room one day after practice, kind of contemplating that. And I remember looking down and I was like, that dude right there is the best wide receiver in the world. So whatever he's doing, he's figured out how to do this thing at a really high level and do it really well. What if I just started trying to do everything that T.O. does exactly the way he does it to the best of my ability? This is literally a conversation I was having with myself. And that's what I did. I watched how he walked, what food he ate at lunch. Was he in the cold tub after practice? Was he working out? Did he work out before practice or after practice? Was he stretching? What did he do on the practice field? How did he run this route? And I just tried to copy him to the highest degree that I could. And he picked up on that. And rather than kind of reject that or shun me, he put his arm around me and was like, hey, man, I see you working. Like, let me show you what this is like from the inside. Let me give you an insider perspective. And he moved me into his house for about a month before I got an apartment. We just became close friends. And he was at that time as important as anybody in my life for helping me grow and get better and learn how to be a pro and see what it looks like to operate at that level. And that lesson that I learned there was something that I took and implemented every step that where I've been. When I got into this business, I started looking at, the people that were doing it at the highest level and just started like, hey, I'm going to take that from him. I'm going to take this from her, this part of that person's game. I like this aspect, and just started doing the same thing. I call it R&D, rip off and duplicate.
It's like a puzzle.
Yeah.
It's like a puzzle, right?
Yeah.
You're pulling various pieces.
Yep. So Terrell was instrumental at that point in time. Again, great friendship, but also the mentorship and what I was able to learn and glean from watching him just be him and operate at the level he was operating on.
So you do have to talk about the race now, though, because how did this come about? How did you ever get him to agree? And were you bantering back and forth and you're like, we're going to run, just 140, but you ended up running like 4?
Yeah. So that's exactly how it happened. We worked out together in Atlanta with the same trainer in the off seasons. And we were just we were doing some sprint drills one day and we were kind of talking trash, and Terrell's very competitive. And so it just got to a point where it was like, we're going to have to, you think you can beat me? Like, I don't think you can. Like, so we actually initially bet a game check on it, which went in my favor because at that point in time, I think my game check was probably like 30 or 40 grand and his was probably like a couple $100,000. So there was substantial upside for me in that. We ended up not putting a game check on it, but we set a date. It was probably late June when we made the bet, and it was like, okay, on July 17th or whatever the day was, we're going to do it. We're going to train for the next month. And right before we go back to camp, we're going to have this race and we're going to see what happens. And so word got out. A bunch of news outlets around Atlanta came out with cameramen and reporters. And yeah, we actually ended up running 4, but what happened is like one of them, I think I false started. Another one of them, we hit arms, like we bumped each other midway down. And so we stopped. And then the third one I won. And then the fourth one he won. So I beat him 1 out of 4 times. He beat me 1 out of 4 times.
That's incredible. That is incredible. So Jimmy, during this time, you founded the Jimmy Farris Future Leaders Foundation in 2004. I know how important community is to you, and dedicating and empowering underprivileged youth academically, athletically, socially, and spiritually is just really important. What motivated you to take this on?
On Tuesdays in Atlanta, we used to do community outreach stuff. And one of my first couple weeks there, we went down and did an event at a high school in downtown Atlanta. And I remember thinking, this is a lot different than the high school that I went to, and had conversations with some of the teachers and some of the administrators, and became aware of some of the struggles and problems that they were having all across the board, in inner city public high schools. And so at that point, I was thinking, I have to do something like that idea where, you hear people sometimes say, oh, everybody's born with the same opportunity. And I immediately was like, that's bullshit. These kids did not, they did not have the same opportunities that I had growing up in Lewiston, Idaho at the high school that I went to. They are severely disadvantaged in relation to how I grew up and the advantages that I had growing up. And so it was at that moment just thinking, well, what can we do to try to bridge this gap a little bit? And that's when the foundation idea popped up, and it just became something that I wanted to try to expose some of these kids to opportunities to help them grow and advance in all those areas. We did a lot of work with youth homes in Atlanta, underprivileged schools, and kids that, maybe their home life wasn't helping them grow to the level that they wanted to. I just wanted to be a small piece that could help close the gap to give these kids hope that ultimately they could do whatever they wanted to do, and they could see us as examples, get around NFL players and people that were there for them and willing to assist them. And it was a really fulfilling part of my life and something that I'm really proud of, the work that we did.
So after retiring from the NFL in 2009, you took a leap into broadcasting. Mm-hmm. You worked as a host. I remember watching you for Comcast Sports. You hosted your own NFL fantasy web show. You appeared as an NFL analyst on various networks. It is so much harder than it looks being a color analyst. I really commend anyone that puts themselves out there like that. But was there always a drive for you to get into broadcasting? And I know that you're so good behind a camera and you have a great voice, but what was the drive there?
I think it was just kind of a natural progression, right? It was at that point in time, I was trying to figure out like what I was good at outside of football. Like what value did I have to offer the world? What could I potentially do as a next career? And obviously I had a lot of knowledge about football and the NFL in particular. And so that was kind of a natural progression. And I found that I really, really enjoyed it. It was a really fun outlet. It was something that I thought briefly about as a career, like really going all in, which I know you know a lot about what that takes and what that looks like. Ultimately, for me, it wasn't something that I wanted to pursue because at that time I didn't want to go through the process of working my way up to where I ultimately wanted to be, which would have been, NFL Network or ESPN or something like that. And so post-football career, I started thinking, I just got to do something that I loved and was really passionate about. And I want my next career to follow suit. And when I thought about what it would take to be really good in broadcast, it would take the same type of passion and commitment and dedication and obsession that my football career had taken. And I just didn't feel that level of passion for it. And so I didn't pursue it.
Well, I think whatever you decide you were going to put your effort towards, you were going to be successful. And I know you dabbled in politics too. And maybe you'll come back to politics because we could really use a level-headed person like you in politics right now. But you did get into politics.
Yeah.
And then you wrote a book. Can you talk about, maybe I kind of jumbled those things together because I think there was a little bit of time in between there. But could you talk just briefly about your political aspirations? And again, I think I also want to touch upon this identity piece, right? Yeah. When you leave a sport, when you're no longer competing in the sport and you're trying to figure out where your mark is and what you're going to bring to the world. And that identity piece is really critical. But you jumped into politics, you wrote a book. Tell us a little bit about that.
So the political journey for me was along the same lines as starting the foundation, right? Mm-hmm. I'd lived in San Francisco, DC, Atlanta, obviously went to school in Montana, spent those 5 years in Missoula. And what I realized coming from Idaho and then being exposed to these different parts of the country, having teammates and great friends that were from all over the country that had significantly different backgrounds and experiences and childhoods than I did, it reinforced that idea that, not everybody's born with the same opportunity. And what I see right here in my bubble isn't what's happening everywhere. It's not everybody's experience. And so what I wanted to bring to Idaho politics was that perspective, like, hey guys, what you see here isn't what's happening everywhere. And there were all of these issues at that time, in particular in 2012, that I had really strong opinions about. And I felt like if I'm going to have these strong opinions, then I need to kind of put myself in a position where I can do something about it so that when these conversations come up, I want to have a seat at the table, and I want to be in a position where I can do something to make a change that I want to see happen. And so that was what the political thing was about. And I enjoyed that thoroughly. It was one of the best times learning about myself, learning about the state where I grew up. So many great lessons within that. I transitioned from that, moved back to Atlanta, and that's when, some of the conversations about writing the book and getting into coaching and speaking really started to happen. And that was just kind of a natural segue, coming out of politics where I'd done a lot of speaking. I'd worked with a lot of people one-on-one, had a lot of conversations with voters. I just naturally gravitated towards this idea of coaching and speaking from stage and trying to help people advance in their career or whatever area of their life they wanted to grow and advance. And so that was kind of that natural progression. And then the book just kind of came out of all of that, putting all of the things that I've learned and experienced, all the great people in my life that poured into me. I wanted to put all that knowledge into a book somewhere where I could just kind of hold it up and say, here's everything that I know about these topics. And so, I started writing the book in 2020, published it in 2022. And 3-4 years later, it's sold 5,000 or 6,000 copies. And I'm happy with that.
And I'm one of those copies. And we're going to have to do another podcast because it's coming. And both my kids and I are going to read it and we're going to talk about it. And I think it's just amazing that you would put yourself out there. And first off, I want to talk about some of those messages in the book, because I do think that there are some key phrases that really articulate what your journey is all about. But I do want to hear, do you have any mentors that helped you articulate this message along the way or brought this out of you, Jimmy?
Too many to name. And I don't just say that just to avoid the question. I talk about that in the last chapter of my book in the acknowledgments. Everybody, every coach, teacher, friend that I came across throughout the entire course of my life has made a deposit in me that came out in the pages of that book. I talked about some of my high school coaches, my head coach, Nick Menegas. I talked about George Stewart, who had a huge influence on me. Joe Gibbs is somebody that I still communicate with to this day, had a huge influence on me. And what I think is special about having had the opportunity to be around so many great people is that I was able to pull a few things from each one of them and see the world differently, because everybody has different perspectives. Everybody handles problems or situations or different circumstances differently. And so I'm just really thankful for kind of the breadth and the scope of people, different ideologies that I've been able to be around and be exposed to, because they really helped me shape what I believe and what matters to me and what I think is important. And that was the basis around which I centered my thoughts on everything I wrote about in the book.
So I like some of your, I don't want to say sayings, or these are coined phrases, but I do know that this, to me, a couple of these phrases I want to bring up: chasing success versus chasing significance.
Mm-hmm. Success is about what you get. Significance is about what you give. And I think thank you. I think, we're taught from a young age. It's like, hey man, you want to grow up and be successful. And I get that. And I was there once too. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. There's a point though, which I think all of us either willingly or sometimes unknowingly evolve to, where you have a certain amount of success, or you've been chasing success for a long time and it just doesn't fulfill you the way that it did. And the shift is from that focus on, well, what can I get? What can I acquire? What can I accomplish? To what can I give? How can I contribute? What's the impact that I can make? And usually when you follow that, or you chase, how can I be significant or how can I be impactful? The success that you were chasing previously follows once you kind of take that focus off of yourself and put it on the areas where you can be impactful and you can contribute. You end up experiencing the success that you were looking for. And so, yeah, that's a big topic for me in a lot of my keynotes and some of my coaching. It's like, what are we chasing here? Like let's start focusing on impact and contribution, and be somebody that other people will say, my life is different because I came in contact with him or because I came in contact with her. That's the type of impact and contribution that we want to make.
Another that I really like is what you focus on, you will find. I want you to talk about that because I do think that there is a lot of truth to that.
Yeah. So not to get too wonky, but there's a part of your brain called the reticular activating system, which what happens is if you like, let's say you buy a red car and now that's a kind of a part of your conscious mind, you'll probably find that you'll see red cars all over the place now. You're like, damn, I didn't know there was this many red cars out there. And they were always out there. But it's now that it's something that's on your conscious mind and your reticular activating system is aware of it, you start to see more of it. And so the trick here is to program that part of your mind to find the good, find the positive, find the opportunity. Because when you look for good, when you look for positive, you find those things because they're always out there. What happens is oftentimes we experience setbacks and failure and discomfort in life. And so our brain gets programmed to always look for that because we expect it. When people say like, well, expect the worst, hope for the best, or, well, we'll see, it's like, well, that's what you're going to find. You're going to find the negative. You're going to find the bad. If you believe that nothing ever works out for you, confirmation bias is going to kick in and going to confirm that that's true. And so I use that phrase to remind me to actively choose to focus on what's good, what's right, what's possible, what can happen, what will happen. And I have this phrase that I say to myself all the time, which is everything always works out in my favor. No matter what I'm going through, no matter what the situation is, I just say, it'll work out for me and it'll work out the best way that it could for me. Does it always? I don't know, because regardless of how it works out, I choose to believe that that was in my favor. So
Jimmy, when you're speaking to groups or you're coaching, do you have some one-on-one? I mean, is there a way to hire you one-on-one, or are you just giving keynote speeches? Like, what's the best way if I wanted to hire Jimmy Farris? How would I do that?
So anybody that would be interested in that can email me. Just shoot me an email at jimmy@jimmyfarris.com. You can go to my website, jimmyfarris.com, and inquire there as well. Just drop your email in a little form. My business right now is the keynote speaking and leadership development. So I've got a handful of different companies that I work with that I do leadership development inside of the company for them.
And what does that look like? Explain that just a little bit more. What does that look like for a company?
Yeah. So I will get hired by one of their executives to work with, like one of the companies that I'm with right now, I work with their regional presidents and their division presidents. And so they'll give me a group of 10 of those people, and I'll take them through a 3 or 6 month leadership development training. And during that time, we dive deep into who they are, their identity as a leader, why they think they've been successful and been able to elevate to where they have. And then we start to talk about leadership principles, things that I learned from Dan Reeves, Joe Gibbs, Bill Belichick, how to build teams. And we form these really amazing friendships and relationships. And I just got an email today from somebody who was in one of my groups a couple months ago, talking about some of the ideas and the concepts that we talked about in the group. And it's just really fulfilling, for me to be able to share stuff that I learned and help or impact or contribute to someone else's growth. And so that's really how those programs are structured. I will say I haven't done in the last couple of years as much one-on-one coaching. Not that I wouldn't, but it would be a very specific type of client that was working in a specific area of business or something along those lines. And I love what I do. I'm so fortunate that I get to work with the type of people and the caliber of people that I get to work with. And I love the leadership development aspect, because when you grow a leader, you're not only helping them be better, but we're expanding their capacity to grow other leaders up underneath them. So it has this ripple effect where when they grow and they get better as a leader, and then they go and lead their people better, their people become better and grow into leadership as well. And so I really prioritize that leadership development aspect because of the ripple effect that it has.
Jimmy, I could sit here and keep going. I mean, we're an hour and 10 minutes into this. This is pretty fascinating stuff. Do you have anyone you want to shout out or anything that you want to add?
Well, they're probably, again, tired of hearing me say this, but I'm, for everyone that remembers me or that I came across or that was a part of my life, particularly when I was in Missoula those 5 years, I just want them to know how grateful I am, because whether they think so or not, they've made a massive contribution into my life, had such a profound impact on me that, things that I took all throughout my NFL career and beyond. And so I'm just so grateful and thankful for the people, particularly in Missoula, those coaches, those players, those fellow athletes like yourself, who we had great conversations in the training room at different times about life or whatever we were dealing with. Like, it all matters, right? None of that stuff is just, throwaway conversations. It all matters. And I've just been really fortunate to have so many great people in my life and come across so many amazing people. And I guess the lesson that I want there to be in that is that you never know who you're impacting in a given conversation. And so, again, for those Missoula fans and those people in that area, they were so important for me. And knowing that, take the opportunity to invest in and engage with these athletes in Missoula, because you never know what impact you're having, or how a little nugget or a word that you say to them might lift them up and be the difference in some area of their life. And I just don't think that can be overstated. I think it's so important.
It's time for the community tip, your guide to people, places, and businesses that make Montana shine. Each week, we'll share something worth checking out right here in our backyard. I'm joined by Pete Hamill, Montana rep for Vertical Raise. Pete, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Krista. How are you? I love being the community tip guy. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's been really fun. Last week, we had a spirited segment when we were talking about Great Falls eateries. Got a lot of feedback on that. I do want to switch gears today and continue on our food tour all across the state. And let's talk about Kalispell, Montana. Pete, can you give me your favorite Kalispell recommendation?
I got a great Kalispell hidden gem. This is going to sound ridiculous, but the restaurant that is attached to the Hilton Garden Inn in Kalispell is called Freestone. And I know it sounds crazy that the Hilton Garden Inn has a good restaurant. I'm telling you guys, it might be the best restaurant in Montana. The menu is high class. The chef is doing creative things and executing on it. I always stay at the Hilton Garden Inn because I just think that place is spectacular. Moose's also has really good pizza, but like, if I'm going to eat, if I can choose one place in Kalispell, it's the Freestone restaurant at the Hilton Garden Inn, and nobody knows about it, and it's unbelievable.
Well, this past week, I was in Kalispell, actually spent a lot of time in Kalispell with the Hellgate Knights. And I found this wonderful gem thanks to some local recommendation, Namaste Montana, which is modern Indian cuisine right in Kalispell, Montana. I had such good chicken tikka masala and butter chicken. I was so impressed. So if you are in the Kalispell area, I never would have thought Indian food, but you should check it out.
I'm checking it out right now. 4.4 stars on Google. That's about right. If you get one that has a ton of stars, it's usually not good. All right, I'll check it out.
And I will need to check out yours as well. So give it again, Pete. What was your tip?
It's called Freestone, but all you need to know is that it's at the Hilton Garden Inn. Just go to the Hilton Garden Inn. The restaurant is set off to the side. Really nice dining area, great menu, a little bit pricey, but worth it. Just excellent for Montana.
Well, and we did mention Moose's. That is definitely a staple in Kalispell, and that might be for more people coming in from out of town, but it seems like a lot of Missoula people love to go to Moose's.
Yeah, Moose's is great. I don't think there's probably anybody in Montana serving better pizza than Moose's, and I know you're going to argue Howard's, but it's not Howard's.
Oh, it is Howard's. It is.
No, it's not.
Or what about Eugene's in Glasgow?
I've been to Eugene's a lot of times. I think it's really good. It's easily my favorite place to eat in Glasgow. This is going to sound bougie, but I like a pepperoni and mushroom pizza, and Eugene's put canned mushrooms on it, which I was not a fan of. And so they got a little bit of a demerit. Outside of that, Eugene's is great. I think Moose's is better.
Thank you, Pete, so much for your community tip. Just one more way to celebrate and support the good happenings all around Montana.
Of course. Thanks for having me, Krista. Looking forward to next week.
Thanks as well to Jimmy Farris, Lewiston, Idaho native, former Griz football standout, Super Bowl champion, and current keynote speaker and author. And thanks to all of you for listening. This week's episode of the Krista Redpath Show was brought to you by Ryan Miller and Coburn, your Montana attorneys. Coming up next week, a great conversation with Katie Mobley, Bozeman native, former Montana State basketball standout, and current girls basketball head coach at Bozeman High.